Welcome to Season 3 of The Business Gist, where we're always talking about the human side of the bottom line. In this season, we're talking to business owners on how they're navigating the worldwide pandemic, what they're doing to pivot, and how they're making tough choices between people and profit.
On this episode of The Business Gist, we are speaking with Kristen Brown.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on the Business Gist podcast.
Hey, Megan.
Hi. Do you just want to maybe start here quick with who you are and what your business is?
Sure. Well, I'm Kristen Brown, and I am a motivational speaker, but I don't live in a van down by the river. I spent 15 years in corporate before having some challenging stuff happen. I was widowed unexpectedly, had a new baby, was in a really high-pressure corporate job during the economic crash. Long story short, and many years of experimentation and back and forth between corporate and my own business later. I left corporate about 6 or 7 years ago to start my own business, and now I help companies help their employees manage stress more effectively so it doesn't impact their leadership, their productivity, and all that good stuff.
So really relevant then right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. A lot of people have been reaching out for virtual stuff because it's exactly what people need. How do you manage stress and still show up with all of the demands that are on us right now and all the time?
Well, I know as a motivational speaker, you're normally out in front of large crowds doing major corporate events. How's your business shifted?
Well, of course, no one's allowed to have events anymore. So most of my events, luckily I had no cancellations, but all of the events that I had booked in, end of March through, kind of the foreseeable future have all been moved out either with a TBD date or a date in the fall. And then I've had several that actually had us do it virtually. So I've had, probably 8 or 9 virtual presentations over the last month and a half, which has been really fun because I've always done virtual, but not nearly as much as I have previously. So it's fun to be able to figure out, okay, how are people living their lives now, literally on Zoom all day? And how can you make that more interesting and effective, not just for me as a presenter, but helping them learn skills too? And that's not what I speak on, but it is interesting to see how they're keeping things less than like my talking head right here, and how we can be more engaged and productive even with the technology barriers between us.
Well, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any tips to share that maybe we can incorporate on this session?
Well, a lot of the sessions that I've been doing, I actually have my camera set much further back so you can actually see almost my whole body. And then I'll vary where I'm at. So right now, this is as far back as I can go. But if my computer were further back, I would do some things that are full body out here, and then moving up to the screen, and then having times where I share my screen. And then I don't have any sitting here, but I have like a lot of props that I use where I show props, or I have a whiteboard. So it's just varying the way that you communicate with other people, and just changing it up, because we learn visually as adults, and it helps to have varying visual cues throughout your Zoom call, even if it's just a team meeting. How can you kind of shake that up a little bit?
Great tips. Well, and a lot of that is really what you're doing when you're on stage too, right?
Yeah. I don't usually use PowerPoint on stage. I'm usually in the audience, and then I've got someone coming up on stage, and then I'm, doing stuff. So it's similar, but, figuring out how to keep the variety there.
Well, as you've been doing more of your virtual sessions, what are you kind of learning and seeing from your audience?
Well, what I've really noticed most, and a lot of people have asked me, what topics are people wanting? I've really noticed a shift, because there's research that shows that even when people are stressed out and pulled in different directions, and like right now, we're all in a completely different work world, they still crave a little bit of normalcy, but they don't want to learn like really hard topics. Like they don't want to learn a new software system. They don't want to learn, a selling process. They don't want to learn those more hard topics. What they're really craving, and what research shows actually helps them be more productive and engaged, is, and I hate calling them soft skills, because soft skills are really the bedrock of human performance, but they're craving more stress management. They're craving, how do you communicate more effectively? How do you show up and master your energy so that you don't let the crabbiness and crankiness of the life that we're living right now show up energetically to the people around you. So I'm really noticing that, but then there's also a lot of research that shows that that's really what people want and need right now in this working environment that we're in.
Very interesting. So I know that, this is a really hard time for a lot of people. Are you experiencing or seeing any silver linings?
Well, I think there's a lot of, it really depends on your situation because, if you're a working dual household, working parents with young kids, that's very, very challenging because those younger young kids don't yet have a grasp of technology. So you're doing a lot more help with the distance learning. And I heard a really interesting quote close to the beginning when schools started closing that it was from a teacher who said, this isn't homeschooling that we're doing, it's distance learning. So let the teachers teach. Your job as a parent isn't to homeschool. So I really felt that, my daughter's 13, so she totally has her own grasp on technology. I don't have to do anything.
Or
But I've
probably
talked,
better than you, right?
right, way better than me. But my friends that have really young kids, I've shared that quote with them, and they're like, oh my gosh, that takes so much pressure off. Because of course, yes, you still have to make sure they're working and doing what they need, but to take that onus off of yourself and that pressure that you have to be there and teaching them all this stuff. The teachers are still teaching. You just have to guide on the technology piece of it.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've really noticed, that a silver lining. It's stressful, but how do you step back and say, okay, let me guide rather than teach?
Yeah.
So that's one silver lining I've seen. Also, a lot of people are taking the time to, get healthier or learn a new language, like we talked about before we started recording. And, so I think there are people that are taking that time. I know for me, and we also talked about this, I'm just taking the time to rest when I can. After 13 years of 100% single parenting, whew, it's nice to kind of have the pressure off of socializing and traveling for work and all of that and being able to just rest. And I can't tell you, I have slept so much during this time. So I think everyone needs to find their own silver lining, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say, when this first started, there were so many Zoom calls and happy hours and things like that with people trying to connect. And, I'm fortunate enough that I'm still working, that what I kept finding myself craving was just quiet time, right? Like disconnected, no screens. I just wanted to shut everything off.
Yeah, I agree. When I first when we went into lockdown, most days I was going online and doing a Facebook Live and just hey, here's what we're doing. And I'm an introvert, but I still was craving that.
Yep.
But for several weeks now, I have not felt that. I have felt let me just now reflect and go deeper into my own kind of self needs.
So as you've been moving through the last 8 weeks, have you had a mantra that's helped you get through everything?
My mantra, even before this, has always been there's enough time for everything. And even during lockdown, it there's this dichotomy of oh, we have so much free time, but yet we still have jobs to do and we still have kids to raise and so I'm still busy.
Right.
And so I'm still trying to fit things in. It's just sort of different types of things I'm fitting in. And I'm still feeling the pressure of oh my gosh, I want to, take this class, or I want to do this, or I need to send an email out for this, a sales call or whatever. So I'm still using that same mantra. There's enough time for everything, and being okay with knowing that everything I wanted to get done today might move to tomorrow, or maybe in a month, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, I'm definitely jealous of everybody who's cleaned out their closets.
I need to do that.
Yeah. That's on my list of things to do. And every time I open them, I'm like, yes, I don't have time for you today. So
I actually have had time to do that, and I just don't want to. I just don't want to.
yeah.
Tedious.
Yeah. There's a reason why it needs to be cleaned, right?
Yep.
Oh, good. Well, so what do you think our viewers should really be thinking about? What's something inspirational to help them continue to move forward?
Well, I think, as many states are already moving out of lockdown and people are going into the office. Many people have always been going into the office. And as we sort of open back up, I think it's really thinking about how do you keep the best parts of quarantine and social distancing, and not let the negative parts of it come with you. So take the best parts and keep those as part of your life. So whether you were doing yoga every day or getting more exercise or saying no more often to the things that were filling up your time, or you were doing out of guilt or expectation, bring those things with you and keep doing those things that filled you up. And as you move back into sort of this new normal that we're all going to figure out and create on our own, what can you do to ensure that you're helping those around you do the same thing, and kind of giving people grace, because we're all going to have different ways of like re-entering society. Some
Yep.
people are going to be so overwhelmed and crabby. Some are going to be so excited to be back,
Yep.
and really figuring out like, okay, how are we going to create this new dynamic between us and between the whole team if you're at work, and with your family if everyone's kind of going their own ways back out into the world.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody yesterday too that's talking about their opening or kind of re-entry into the workplace with their workforce. And piece of advice I gave that I thought was really good was no judging, right?
Yes.
Everybody has a different perspective on it. They have different things going on in their own lives. So whether you believe in wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, right? Like that, don't pass judgment on that. If you want to be back in the office or don't want to be back in the office, like don't pass judgment. So I really like that piece of advice.
Yeah, that gives me chills because it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's a new world that we're living in. I think you touched on something I talked about with another person earlier too, is they said, whatever you do, don't go back to the old normal.
No.
We talk a lot about what that new normal is, but just hearing like just making that the intention, don't go back to the old normal.
Yeah, the world had a lot of challenges, and it still does, and it still will. But man, if we could all just like level up a little, rise up a little, do a couple more things a little bit more positively, think about the huge ripple effect that would have if we all did that. Just created a new normal that was a little better.
Yeah. How do you do that though? Because I think humans are creatures of habit, right? And so when you go back to your old routine or somewhat close to an old routine, do you think people will fall back into their old habits, or do you think they can make that shift?
Well, psychology shows that humans like to be on their path. Even if their path is filled with bad habits and wrong choices, our mind the same path rather than even the tiniest shift. That's why changing habits are so hard. So I think it depends on whether someone has actively sought out to change habits during this 8 weeks, and whether they're mindful and reflective enough in the moment to say, okay, how does this habit shift serve me and my loved ones and my work team, and how does it not? And honestly, some people have picked up bad habits during this 8 weeks, drinking too much, eating too much. I don't know about you, but I've maybe gained a few pounds.
In your pajamas all day.
Yeah, pajamas all day, sleeping in. So I think it really requires someone's mindfulness. And unfortunately, most of the world doesn't take the time for that level of energetic mindfulness in the moment. Just today on Instagram, I posted something about, most of us are living in a very surface level experience where our life is moving, and that's not bad or wrong. It's just, that's the way life is. And many of us just don't take the time to step back and say, okay, what is bigger going on around me and how do I impact that? And so those habits that we had before, good or bad, will be pretty easy to fall back into if we don't mindfully choose a different path.
Yeah. Wouldn't it have been nice at the start of this if we would have all known, hey, it's going to be at least 8 weeks? Because that's about how long it takes to really change a habit, right?
Yes.
But we could have gone into it saying, okay, I'm going to do these 3 things. Yeah, I do think about the habits I've created and not created during this time. And I think you're right. It's going to have to be a conscious decision that as we go back to normal, what are we going to bring with us?
Yeah, I'm creating a speaking program right now called We're Back, with lots of A's. We're back. And it's about that very thing. It's about, how do you bring yourself back into the world with the things that you want to bring with you, and leaving behind the things that you don't, so that you impact yourself and your team in the most positive way.
How do you think people can let that obligation or guilt factor go when they go back to the when we go back?
Well, I think a lot of people they actually feel like they're cooler when they're busier. Like there's this like glorification of busy. And so you say yes, and you say yes to that happy hour. And it's like, ooh, look how many happy hours I'm going to, or and some people love that and they're extroverts and that does fill them up. So I'm not saying that's not true for some people, but for many of us, the more meetings, the more volunteer things that we do, the more social things we do, the more things we have our kids in, we think that there's pride in that. And there partially is, but when you step back and look at the impact all of that overscheduling creates on you, your family, your work team, how do you kind of weigh the pros and cons? And again, everyone's different because, our personality types, our jobs, our family dynamics, our upbringing all contribute to how we're showing up in the moment. And again, it's that mindful awareness of like, what is the energy that I'm bringing when I'm overscheduled because I'm doing something out of guilt? If I'm okay and I'm still, loving going to work and I'm, still bringing my best self to my team or my family, well, then maybe volunteering, even though it kind of sucks your time and you may like it, but it's not the perfect fit, is okay. But if you're finding that you're doing something, volunteering, your kids in 1 or 2 extra activities, they don't need to be, you commit to too much, and you find that that's making you crabby and, snap at people on your team or at home, what is the impact that it's causing you on others? And again, that is a mindful reflection point for people as well.
Sure. So maybe really what people should think about is just giving themselves permission to do what feels right for them.
Yeah. Yeah, because guilt is a rough thing, especially I think going back, so many people will be like, oh, aren't you excited to be out of the house? And yay, we're at happy hour. And someone's sitting there like,
no, I miss being at home, right?
Yes. Or if you've already been working this whole time and suddenly, your rest of your family is back out in the world too. And like, now you have to go do all their stuff. Like, it's just, everyone's dynamics are going to be so, so different, as they always have been. So I think this will be a good opportunity for us to practice that self-awareness, but also awareness and grace for others. And the no judgment, like you said, oh gosh, it's so simple, but just so amazing.
Well, any parting advice that you want to give to people?
I think just don't be hard on yourself as things evolve and change. It's going to be a long time before there's like any normalcy. Like, it's going to be kind of this roller coaster for a long, long time. So just give yourself a break. Don't be hard on yourself. Let yourself kind of flow. And I always tell people, follow the feel good vibes. If something feels good, do more of that. If a human in your life feels good, do more of that. If an activity feels good, do more of that. And let the endorphins fill you up, because that will help to guide everything that you do.
I love that. I'm gonna follow that advice. So if people want to learn more about what you're doing, where should they find you?
They can go to my website, kristenbrownpresents.com. Everything's there. On Instagram, I post a couple times a day, lots of stories and stuff there where we've got advice and videos and all kinds of good stuff over there. So that's at Speaker Kristen.
Perfect. Good. Well, we'll make sure to share that information too. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I love all that advice and insight that you had to share.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on The Business Gist. Make sure to follow us at thebusinessgist.com. Have a great day.